as we have a special guest joining us now. Russell Brown is here. Welcome, Russell.
Hey, how we doing?
Russ! What's up, man? How are you?
Yeah, Combine week. I'm doing well. How are you guys?
You're busy. I know. I'm doing good.
You excited for today? Today is like the inaugural, it gets real day.
It gets real.
Yeah,
popping the cherry.
you get to watch. Yeah, you get to watch guys run around in their
Maybe not
underwear.
popping
It's
the
awesome.
cherry, Jeff, but Russ, I want to start with this question. We'll start off, a little lightweight. What are the expectations, at least from a talent evaluation standpoint? What are you looking for in a player? Everyone looks at the sexy, the bench. What's your reps? What's your 40 time? What's your cone drill time? Mm-hmm. What are you looking for most out of an individual player? Is it how he goes about performing his drills, his attitude, his character, or is it kind of a mix of both? What's the evaluation look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both. It depending on the position, right? Like if you're looking at defensive lineman, you want to see a good 3-cone drill. You don't always want to see a straight line speed. That 40 time doesn't always matter. But when you're looking at a defensive back, sometimes that 40 time will matter. You want to look at how they recover, how can they run long down the field and things like that in that straight line. And that's always important. You think back to a few years back with the Lions with Tabor. We took him in the second round, and his 40 time was like 4.65, and I've been permanently scarred for taking him in the second round over some other players. So, you just kind of put everything together. And when you look at like Malik Willis this year, he's not going to test, and it makes sense from a financial perspective because if his numbers aren't as good, then obviously it affects ultimately where he's going to go, because right now he maybe started here and he's currently going way up because he's interviewing well and things like that. So you want to see how they interview, and then just depending on the position, specific drills kind of matter.
I want to ask you a question, Russell. We talked earlier about the wide receivers and the Lions being at 32, 34. The possibility, I'm looking at guys, like David Bell, a Jahan Dotson, hopefully a Treylon Burks. We'll see how, after the combine where he goes. But who's your personal favorite now, just getting a chance to scout these guys? And who's a player that we should watch that might be into the first round, early second, that might be a surprise?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the first round, if there's an opportunity for us to land Jahan Dotson, I would absolutely love that. I mean, there's a chance that he could end up going a lot sooner. And I think when you look at this draft, if there wasn't a Treylon Burks or a Drake London there, then I think there would be a legitimate chance for Jahan Dotson to potentially be the first receiver off the board. I mean, he's a great athlete. He shows really good, agility and just lower body hip fluidity within his routes. He's got probably some of the most sure hands in this draft. He does a great job catching the ball away from his body, and he shows, a lot of good burst after catching the football and things like that. So I enjoy his overall skill set, and I think there's a chance he's there at 32. Maybe he's there at 34. I think those are realistic options. I don't see Treylon Burks or Drake London being there. I mean, I think when you get to the combine and then you see how big these players are, it makes a big difference for some teams, and it helps them really separate the group. Because with this wide receiver position, there's not really a sure number one guy. Like for me, Drake London's the number one receiver, but I would have no issues with the team taking Chris Olave as the first receiver in this draft. So it just really depends on ultimately how the boards shake out. But when you look at Burks, he's wearing 4X gloves. I mean, I got White Castle sliders for hands, and he's wearing 4X gloves, So I think that's going to make a big difference when you just look at the overall size and then the speed of some of these players. But the realistic option would be Jahan Dotson. And then after that, I would say probably, David Bell would be the next guy just from the consensus perspective, who I think could be there at 32, 34. He understands how to use his length and separation, or length and hands to create separation. You saw it a lot against Michigan State earlier in the year, which pains me to say that. But, he did a really good job just beating us up, and he does a good job coming back to the football with back shoulder throws. He makes good adjustments. So I like David Bell quite a bit. I think he's going to test pretty well, and he could end up being that pick at 32 just because they don't want to risk the chance of somebody else taking him at 33.
Russell, the last time you were on, you told us that Aiden Hutchinson was the clear number one prospect coming out of the draft. I got to talk to you about the number 2 overall pick for the Detroit Lions. I'm kind of hanging on the ledge right now. And if they go with a Malik Willis at number 2, 1, I want to know what are the chances of it. 2, what do you think they should do with the pick? 3, who are the best players on the board? And 4, how do I not kill myself if they take a quarterback at number 2?
Stay off the Ambassador Bridge, please. Good Lord. But yeah, like with this, I don't see them going quarterback. I really don't. I know that's kind of how we want to speculate it and things like that, because if that is your guy, you got to take your guy. But I don't believe it's going to be that way. I think you look at how this team is going, there's still a lot of areas where they can improve. And by taking a quarterback, you kind of put yourself in the 8 ball, because if you take him at 2, he doesn't necessarily have to play right away because you do have Jared Goff, but you're not really in a position to just take a guy and have him sit there and kind of wait. Like, you need to take your guy to know that he's a sure thing, and there's no QB here that's a sure thing. So I think Aiden Hutchinson makes a lot of sense. Could he go first overall? Yeah, he could. If he ends up going first, I think Kayvon Thibodeau would be the next player that they strongly consider, just because of, 1, his overall athletic ability, the blend of speed and power to his game. He's got a flexible lower body, which you like to see from the position. And really, I find it not concerning, but kind of eyebrow raising in a sense when Dan Campbell's talking at the combine and he's saying and mentioning that, we're going to potentially go to more of a 4-down lineman front. So that to me is kind of indicating that he's expecting one of those defensive linemen to be there, obviously, and he's got an interest in taking one of those guys. And just looking at how they've built this team, they're starting in the trenches, and that's what good football teams do. So could they go Malik? Yeah, they could. Could they go Kenny Pickett? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I don't think they're in any position to take that quarterback just yet, because there isn't a sure thing. So you have Jared Goff. They've invested that time, obviously some money into him, and I think that's going to be their guy. So as they move into this year, and could they take one later in this draft at the 3rd or 4th round with like Bailey Zappi out of Western Kentucky? Absolutely. But I think it'll be Kayvon or Aiden ultimately. Kyle Hamilton, that's really a long shot. I'd be pretty surprised with that one.
Ooh, and that brings me to my follow-up question, because I want to get your personal take. We have this debate with people in our network as well, just taking that guy at number 2, and I'm talking about Kyle Hamilton, if you like him that much. Or are you on the team that says edge rusher is always more valuable? Because that's kind of how me and Adam always talk about it. Or are you in the camp of, if you like Kyle, take him at number 2? Do you see more value in that edge rusher early in the draft? Or are you someone that says safeties, maybe wait a little bit? Or like, what's your take on it?
Well, when you look at kind of the history here, you find better value with safeties later in the draft. When you look back at 2017, you see Justin Reed going in the 3rd round, Jesse Bates going in the 2nd round, really good safeties right there. Marcus Williams, another example, who could potentially be a Detroit Lion. He's going to hit the free agent market. I would, definitely think that he'd have some interest coming here to play with former coaches that he's played with in New Orleans. But ultimately, I mean, really what it boils down to is you got to take good football players. And the 2 best players in this draft outside of Evan Neal, to me, is Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau. And sure, you could make that case for Kyle Hamilton, but if you're not bringing back Charles Harris, who led the way with sacks, and you potentially move on from Trey Flowers, which kind of looks like that's going to happen, if that's the case, who's rushing the passer? Because if you can't get after the quarterback, he's going to have all day to sit back there, which we've seen time and time again. I mean, how many times have we watched Aaron Rodgers go from left to right, stand back there, and just pick us apart? And sure, it would be great to have a ball hawk safety in the back end of your defense that's 6'4", 220, can pretty much do anything back there. But he's only one guy. He can only cover only so much ground back there in the NFL. If he's playing in a dual safety look, if he's got cover 2 responsibility, he's only taking one half of the field. He's not taking the whole field. If it's a single high look, he's free to roam back there. But ultimately, it comes down to getting after the quarterback, and they've got to go after and get after the quarterback.
How I see it, or I'm not trying to discredit the prospect. I think we can all agree Kyle Hamilton's a great prospect, but it starts in the trenches, right? And when I think of a safety, I look at value. And the top 7 safeties in the NFL, 5 of them were selected after the 1st round. Tracy Walker was a 3rd, 4th round pick, I believe. You can find value. Jesse Bates. All right, yeah, you have the Minkah Fitzpatricks, but, is he the MVP of that defense, or is it really TJ Watt? And how I look at it is, if I want to stop the opposing team quarterback, I got to put pressure on him. And we saw it against, Ohio State this year, Michigan and Ohio State. How did they beat Ohio State? Well, they got to the quarterback. It was that simple. They were able to run the ball, obviously, on offense, but I really think the way you, I wouldn't say eliminate, but the way you slow down a really talented quarterback is you put pressure on him. I think that's the clear and obvious choice, especially that high. My goodness, you know, people are comparing him to Ed Reed. Russell, I kind of want to kill myself sometimes hearing it. You know, we're talking the greatest
Here we go.
safety ever, a top 3 defensive, top 4 defensive player of all time. And when you select Kyle Hamilton at number 2, if I'm not 4 or 5 years in with that 5th-year option, 20, 25 interceptions, 4 or 5 all-pros, well, what the hell did I spend it on? That's my problem with Kyle Hamilton. I don't think he can reach the expectation of a number 2 overall pick, even if he's a talented player.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rich comparison. I mean, to compare any player to a Hall of Fame caliber player is really, you're doing yourself a disservice. I'm not a big pro comparison guy. I like to let players be themselves because I don't want to put that target on them and say, oh, you know, you've got to be the next Calvin Johnson, the next Ray Lewis, and et cetera. Sure, you can look at a player and see certain play styles and say, yeah, no, I can see, you know, he's comparable in a sense and he plays similar to Golden Tate or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, I try to let a player be himself. I want Kyle Hamilton to be Kyle Hamilton. Could he be a Hall of Fame caliber player when it's all said and done? Absolutely, he could. But those are big shoes to fill. And like you mentioned, there's just so much value in this draft and really any draft at the safety position later. And I think when you look at this team, yeah, they got to draft good football players. But when you've got the possibility of 2 top-tier edge rushers being available to you, you've got to take that guy.
Hey, you made it all the way through. I'm so proud of you. Why don't you make me more proud? Like, subscribe, and watch another video.